Hi everyone, I'm Nicole van der Hoeven. I'm a developer advocate at k6.io, and today I'm not actually going to talk about how I use Obsidian for work. I'm talking about how I use it for play, specifically D&D. Let me show you this graph. This is the graph view of the 3 campaigns that I play in on a regular basis, so that's weekly. This large one is 93 sessions in, and it's a 4th edition campaign set in the Forgotten Realms. And both of these 2 colors, the purple and the orange, are set in Exandria, except this larger purple one is 39 sessions in, and I DM that. And this smaller one is only 4 sessions in, and I play in the same game that the previous speaker and the DMs. So I really like keeping all of my information in the same vault. There are very few connections between them, and I think that taking notes is even more important when you have something like this situation where I'm both playing and DMing in the same world. So there are some pretty major differences, and I need to make sure that I'm not metagaming. So today I'm going to cover how I keep the campaigns separate, my notes as a player in Andy's campaign, and my notes as a DM, and how different that is from each other. So 3 ways that I keep the campaign separate. Firstly, each of these campaigns is in a separate folder. So in Rome, when I used it, I used namespaces. That way I can have the same note in multiple campaigns, and that's handy for these 2 games where there are a lot of the same places and there's a lot of overlap. And the second thing that I do is I do keep world pages as sort of maps of content. So let's look at the one that I've got for Andy's game. This is the world of the temporary white circle. So I've got the player characters there, and each one has a photo as well. And I have quests and questions, and this page is where I put in outstanding quests, things more like projects, things that'll take a bit of time to finally tick off. Sometimes they're very general, they're not even really questions, just observations of things that I see or that are happening in the world. I also follow the GTD system in this agenda, so I use next actions, waiting for someday maybe, and I like to do that just because sometimes there are things that I need to do in the next session, and if I don't have a separate one to quests and questions, they'll just get lost in all the mix. And the bulk of it is in the session, so we'll just have a look at this one that I've got. I do use a template for all of this. I won't go into templates because I think Leah will go more in detail into that later. But in general, I follow Sly Flourish's not lazy DM guide for session prep, except I do it as a player as well. But I do have a session summary that I do for every session, at the end of every session, and then I tag it like this, and that's mainly so that I can embed it in the next game. So this one is the embedded session summary for the previous note, and that's just handy to refresh my memory, as well as sometimes the memory of the other players, because in this game there are only 2 of us that take notes. So then I have the log. Now, when I'm filling this in during the game, I'm just, pasting handouts there and not having as many links. But what I always do is after the session, I go back through the notes, and then I start to piece things together. I start to turn some things into links, and I create notes per NPC or per page. And I like to do that after the game so that I have some time to think about what I want to do in the next game as well. A key thing to these notes is that I only ever write what my character knows. or at least I try to. That way I'm not metagaming. Going back to this map of content or this world page, I do have these three sections: factions, gods, and places. And if I look at Hupperduke, for instance, you'll see, oh, by the way, that's leaflet. I'll talk about that later. But for every location, every city, I also have some places within it. So these are kind of like either places of note or districts, and these are some shops. And all of this is done through data view queries. And I use the metadata that I have in every NPC or location page as fodder for these queries. I find it really useful, both as a player and as a DM, to see the people that are in a certain city. Now, I want to show you what my workspace looks like. Not the one that I play with Andy, but the one for my 4th edition campaign, because in both of my 5th edition campaigns, I do use D&D Beyond. So I don't really need to have a character sheet and all that, but for my 4th edition campaign, I do need to have everything in Obsidian. So this is a little bit squished because I'm using the smaller monitor, my laptop monitor, just so it's easier for you all to see. But this is what it looks like. I've got it spread out and on my bigger monitor, but this is just a cool way to save this view, because I always need these things open during the game. So I'll usually go to the session log here. I have next actions here, quests and questions. This is the HP for the party, which I can adjust on the fly as well. These are the abilities of my character, or powers as they're called in 4th edition. And these are my scores and skills and stuff. I'm also using Jeremy's dice roller plugin here, just in case. I mean, I typically like to roll physical dice, but on the odd occasion that I feel like all my physical dice have betrayed me, I do just roll here as well. So I just like to have, I like this setup. I like having a workspace because that way I don't need to open each one up separately. And sometimes it reminds me too that, hey, I need to be looking at the things I've said I want to do and putting things in there as the game progresses that I want to do later. So, going to how I use it as a DM, I said earlier that I play as a DM and as a player. Let me just exit out of these. One of the plugins that I use just for DMing is the gallery plugin. So this view shows me a bunch of photos of NPCs that I haven't yet used, but they're usually photos that I found at some point while browsing the internet for interesting characters. And sometimes I have an idea for where I want them to fit in. Other times I just think they're cool and I save them for future use. And I use gallery for this because it's just nice to be able to see all of them in one place. And sometimes I start here when I'm creating an NPC, because if I already have a photo, then that's less work that I have to do. What else do? I also have a separate vault. So I said that I like to keep things separate as much as possible. But this vault is actually just for my players. So everything in here is tailored to them. And I don't like to show too much of, actually I don't show them at all what I'm doing with my campaign notes. But what I do is I always have a video here. We do record our sessions, but it's only really for us. So these are all unlisted, so I can't share them. And I have the session summary here. I tend to keep that pretty, spoiler free, so it's safe to show my players. And then during the game, I will drop in things here, handouts, NPCs, things that they see, and I won't provide that much context because that's their job, really. So then when they feel like it, or as they feel like it, they'll then put things into the people section. So you'll notice that in my other vault, I don't actually have, I don't use my folder structure much at all. They're all just in the same folder within for the campaign. But here, because my players aren't really that, they're not using Obsidian outside of the game, they're more used to a folder structure, so I kind of replicated that here as well. So then they'll go and separate out those photos, and they'll sometimes have notes as well, depending on which player it is. And I kind of just let them do their own thing, but at least all my handouts are in this one place. I also like to have this story thus far page where we go through I go through all of the session summaries, and then in the ones where I started recording videos, I also embed them here. Aside from it being a nice place to look back and remember what happened in the previous session, it's kind of, for as a DM, it's kind of nice to see how far I've personally gone as a DM and how far my players, who are both pretty new to D&D, have gone as well. I also have an about our game page where I have links to things that we need during our game, and when we meet, a few things about the world, and a link to the calendar. So I do have a calendar on Fantasy Calendar, but I don't let them see that. I just think that they should be able to know, what the days of the week are and that kind of thing. So going back to my my vault here, my DM vault. Let me close this off. I also wanted to show you this random tables thing that I've got. So I mentioned earlier that I have Jeremy's dice roller plugin, and I use that a little bit as a player to actually roll dice, but what I use it the most for is generating random, rolling on random tables. So I really like having my own encounter tables or really anything. So how that works is you have a table like this, and you can, with Obsidian, it's just so easy to create this. I do use the advanced tables plugin to keep it looking nice even in edit mode. And then you just have to put this thing here to kind of name it. And then I have this random rolls note, and I use this syntax to roll on something on that table. So if I switch to preview mode here, I've got, the current adventure, the next adventure that I want to do is Shem Sham's Bedtime Rhyme from Candlekeep Mysteries. So I have something specific to that. But I also have one for NPC creation, for example. So sometimes I will put an NPC that they've already encountered, but other times this is just for when they say, oh, so what's the name of this shopkeeper that I didn't tell you I was going to look for? So then I can kind of go through these and I say, oh, his name is Edel. That's just a good way to never be at a loss for names. And it depends on how I don't always use all of these things. For some NPCs, it's enough to just use this. But for others, it's nice to be able to know their bond or flaw or secret. It's kind of, you just click on it until you find something that makes sense for this character. I have a whole bunch of names. I also have things that are more setting related, like for settlements and taverns and such. But it really depends on what I'm looking for. But I think that having the dice roller for Obsidian is what makes it the best note-taking tool for D&D, because it lets you very easily create your own encounters. So for these ones, I usually start with something else. So I will start with some of the like D&D specific or D&D created or Wizards of the Coast created encounters and that, but then sometimes I like to add things in depending on where we are, or some things that are specific to the character. So I also like, for instance, I use the Tome of Beasts series as well for a lot of my monsters, just to keep it interesting. And so I created my own encounter just for plants, because we were going to a place in my game where all of the enemies were plants. It's very cool just to be able to create a list and be able to randomize from that. So another thing that I wanted to show you was the stat blocks. So let's go to Clockwork Weaving Spider. It's another Jeremy Valentine plugin. He's really just nailing it. This is a really cool one where you can create your own stat blocks basically, and there's a format for this. I have a shortcut for it, so anytime I just type in that shortcut, it enters this, and then I can start to modify it as necessary. So this is one for a Clockwork Weaving Spider, which I got from the Tome of Beasts, but then I changed a few things. I increased the challenge rating due to me changing some of the hit points and some of the damage that it deals as well. I gave it another reaction. So this is a really good reason to use Obsidian as well, because I use D&D Beyond, but on D&D Beyond, even though you can create homebrew monsters, it's a little bit more of a pain to do that. Last thing that I want to show you is how I use Leaflet. So let's go to Firefly Cellar. And I actually have two maps here. This one was the one that came with the adventure, and this is a much cooler one that I found after the fact. And I love it because you can zoom in and really see the details, right? So you can't do that very easily in Obsidian. And I also like that I can put these little markers. So if I don't remember what something is, like whose room this is or anything, I can just click on it and, oh yeah, that's Galeby's room. Or, if my players go in through here, I'll click on that and it takes me to that section of my notes. So then I can say, okay, this is the Obsidian admonition plugin that Jeremy also creates. You're seeing a pattern here, but I use this info block to tell myself that this is box text. So this is what I'm going to actually read word for word. And then there's just a few notes as well. Then I always have a back to map thing so that I can go back and say, okay, well now they've gone to this. Oh, that was it. But then I can say they've gone to this room. So I really love doing it this way, because then that lets me jump quickly from one section of my notes to another. So that's not really something that you can do with, something like OneNote or Notion. I just find it really enhances my game and lets me, as a relatively new DM, feel confident about running an adventure. Okay, just to wrap up here, I do have some things that I've written, so you can see more about how I do things, my setup in detail, by going to my site, NicoleVanderhoeven.com, and I'll put this link in the chat so that you can have a look at that. But this is one on how non-lazy DMs use Obsidian for D&D, in my opinion. And I also have another one where I talk about how I do the same thing, but as a player. So have a look at that. And if you have any other questions about my setup, feel free to hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Vanderhoeven. I'll put it in the description or the chat as well.